Yes, he can. Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
You wouldn't understand.
Thanks for joining us for another Donnybrook. We've had good shows. We've had great shows. And tonight we're going for our 199th great show. We've been stuck on 198 for a long time. So we'll see what happens. Let's meet the panelists. She's with Jennifer on the Big 550 KTRS, Wendy Wiese. Bill McClellan from STLtoday.com. Ray Hartmann, founder of the Riverfront Times. You see his column on Substack. And Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American, who was on the Dave Glover Show this week with Steve Ellman, the county executive for St. Charles County. It was a big week for St. Charles because the board there unanimously voted to give a property tax freeze for people who are seniors or 62 and older. And this is thanks to a new state law that says that counties can decide to do this individually. So now, if you're just 62 years old, which I think is kind of young, actually, you can freeze your taxes. And the money will not be then, the additional money won't be going to the fire district, the schools, the library, or the ambulance district.
Well, you're talking to the guy who just turned 63, and it was all of a sudden like, oh, tax break.
Yeah, right. St. Charles.
Two things with Steve. One, oh my gosh. My idea of a Republican, different on, ideas, but just what a great guy. I really like him, okay? He explained that, and it was on the show, that, well, we're going to get sued by both sides. One side, you can't do this. The other side saying you didn't go far enough. So he said, we're prepared for that, so let's just move on to the legal part of it and get that out of the way. He said inflation is playing a role because personal property tax went up, but so did the cost of a lot of other things like in St. Charles County. And this is true probably in all counties, and so that's why he favored it and why they were making the move. But myself, I just think it's a bad idea. I think that in this day and age, any municipality anywhere that thinks ultimately they won't need that money, it's a mistake. I think ultimately it plays out that it's a mistake.
And I'm like, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I agree. I mean, it's the young people raising families that really need a break more than old people. And I say that as a person who can hardly remember 60.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm like you in terms of Steve Ellman, big fan. But this just this screams politics to me. I mean, it really does, because that is an important voting block, and you're locking them in for a long time. David Stokes of the Show Me Institute was on with McGraw this week, and he said that the idea is terrific, but the legislation simply it's not sound. And I don't know if that meant that I had to get out of the car. I don't know if that meant that it has to be reworked, but schools, as you said, fire district protection, and for Steve Ellman, I believe he also was quoted as saying that he thinks that the growth will keep up in terms of, making up the balance. But if we learned anything from the pandemic, surprises do happen.
First of all, this love for Steve Ellman is
you like him too.
troubling. I don't really want to waste time talking about it. I think it actually is. I mean, I don't like the idea generally, but I think every county, probably has different needs and different whatever, and so I kind of don't like weighing in on what they. In other words, I generally agree with like what Bill says, is that I think we're patronizing old people, as one of them. And of course, I just resent being that old. But I don't think
old enough. Maybe if it was 80.
But again, it's their county.
If it was 90, isn't that one thing? But
my
also,
point, Charlie,
I have a question for this founder. How can you be in favor of the Boeing tax cuts? And Boeing has billions of dollars in profit, but not for the seniors. And some of them, you know, some are wealthy, but not all. I talked to one woman, she's 61. She's not eligible for this yet. She lives in St. Charles, and she said, you know, I have $600 a month in medical prescriptions, and I could really use a freeze on my taxes.
Hey, everybody could use a freeze on their taxes, Charlie, and how I can support Boeing when I'm not supporting my fellow seniors is easy. Boeing is in a fight to develop the next generation fighter plane, and if it works, it's going to be terrific for the whole region. And so they need help to do that. I say fine.
You're thinking jobs.
Giving a tax break to seniors, but not working people with young kids just doesn't make any sense.
I understand, but to Wendy's point, though, about the jobs, don't forget, Boeing can cut 5,000 jobs and still get its tax break. Yes.
Can I argue with my fellow
Not
founder?
5,000, it's like 4,600.
I happen to be with Bill, but on the Boeing thing, but it's not because Boeing needs help. Boeing is the Boeing tax cut thing is a part of a phenomena that is just a horrible game that you either play it or you don't play it in economic development.
Or you're in the Stone Age.
Well, you can't nuclear. It's disarmament.
So, okay, what I'm just witnessing now are two of our liberal founders, usually liberal, not always.
I don't
you
like
always
it.
liberal.
I don't like the tax cut. I just think
And you are now defending corporations over the seniors who built this country.
It's the cost.
That's a good way to put it, Charlie.
Well, yeah.
If you listen close enough, you can hear Martin Dugan.
Topic number 2, Wendy Wiese. It was a rather unusual post on X, the social media site formerly known as Twitter. Well, the Missouri Department of Public Health announced that there will be a new COVID vaccine coming out in October, and it said, new COVID vaccine coming out in October. If you're into that, if not, keep scrolling. Shouldn't the Missouri Department of Public Health be a staunch champion for good measures in public health and not go wobbly on X?
I don't think they're going wobbly. I think it's like the electronic highway billboards where, hey, click it or I mean, that kind of stuff. I'm like you, though. I think the Department of Health should speak with zero humor that it's cold, it's flu season, RSV season. Please get your shots. Period.
Yes.
Don't be cute. Don't give it, ha ha.
I like you.
I'm sorry. I know. I'm no fun. I know it.
In these days of cultural wars, they're putting out this information. The COVID shots are going to be available, but there's 40% of the people who'd rather get their advice from the pillow guy. And, so
You're
they're
right. It's
they're
sad.
just making light of it, and I think it's fine.
Well, I'm not calling for anybody to be fired. I just think it ought to be sort of authoritarian.
I agree with you. Certitude.
Now, if they're making, I understand. They certainly can't be joking about health information. In that case, I don't think.
Because that looks like it's it's not that big a deal.
I think
they said they were joking because in a subsequent tweet or post, they said that humor brings us together.
Well, and I was just going to say that the most successful television commercials are ones that have just a little part of humor, and that helps people remember the name of the product. For one, and that's like proven out. That's why you don't see, now politics is separate, obviously, but that's why you don't see anymore a lot of, we're better than this, or ours does this and theirs doesn't. They've kind of left that behind because that doesn't really work. So, yes, the health department should still be putting information out there that everybody needs to get vaccinated.
Right.
But to diffuse a situation
that's not the health department's job.
But it works. I understand. But we got to do what works.
It works if it's Eli and Peyton Manning.
No,
this is public health. It has to be no gray, funny area, just black or white.
I think you're leaving one part of this out. We can all sit here and agree about vaccines. However, we're in a red state. and this is health, and if you don't believe that that matters, look at Florida, where the public health director, whatever he could call him, was just, he's a nut, literally is telling people not to get vaccines.
Yeah.
So it would be a high wire. I agree with your sentiment, but I think it would be a high wire act in Missouri for the health department to be pushy about getting vaccines.
Okay.
I don't think it would be that easy for them. I wish it was.
Well, actually, they tried.
I wish it was.
If there's any comic delivery, that to me, in my mind, a lot of people are going to say, see, they're laughing about it. It's not funny, or it's not
Alvin
serious.
Reid, how funny was it when you read the Post-Dispatch story this week that the chancellor of Webster University, former guest of this program, by the way, is making $992,000 a year. The president is making $858,000 a year. This is a school that's lost $125 million over the last 10 years, $25 million in each of the last 2 years, and its enrollment is about half of what it was in 2010. And then there are some buildings on campus, like the Winfred Moore Auditorium and others, that really could be renovated in short order. Do you think that that's too much money, and do you think the trustees should be talking about it?
Well, I always think that when they call and ask a question in the newspaper, just answer the question. Okay, so yes, just be open and upfront about it. More importantly, my mom got her master's degree at Webster University.
Wow.
Right. I won't say how long ago it was, Mom, but you know, yeah. So it's a private school. And what a private school pays their president and their chancellor is up to that private school, because that's not our money, so to speak. Now, I don't know how much it costs to go to Webster, and they're all over the world. And I think maybe Webster's financial crisis is caused by the fact that they have campuses in a bazillion places. But to run all that, I'm not saying I'm not saying you're earning your salary by saying you're running all of that. But I am saying that if the trustees worldwide say this is how much we're going to pay to do this job, then I don't have a problem with that. I just don't.
You know, it's the corporatization, is that a word?
It is now.
It wasn't. I mean, you know, I have worked for a corporation that the stock dove down from like 42 to $1, and the executives continued to get raises, and the rationalization in the corporate world is, well, we need their experience now more than ever. You know, this is a challenging environment. So I think the worse things get at Webster, the more these top people are going to...
I don't care. I actually don't. I mean, it's a private university. I was kind of curious how they arrived at 992. I mean, why not give her another 8? You know, I mean, no, but I mean,
for that reason.
I don't know. I mean, round it up.
It's like, why did things cost $19.99, not $20?
It was a great story, though. I think
it was a great
story, but I don't.
It was originally, this was the Sisters of Loretto, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I do occasionally wonder what some of the former nuns would have to say about some of these salaries being paid.
Well, and I think with some of the current students who are paying, I talked to some staffers here who went to Webster, and they were on scholarship, and they were still paying $40,000 a year. And that's really one of the big problems with academia. Yeah. Kids are graduating with these big bills they have to pay forever because the administrators pay themselves too much, and there's too many administrators. Well, and now, how can you lose money but get pay increases?
Well, Charlie, your former company, Odyssey, they came this close to being delisted from the NASDAQ, or they were delisted, and yet they still were giving their bosses pay raises. They were giving themselves pay raises.
Odyssey
they
stock
made the mistake of allowing you to retire.
It was 8 cents a share in June, and then they went to a 30-for-1 reverse split, so now it's like up to 60 cents. But yes, even though they're almost delisted from NASDAQ, the executives gave themselves millions of dollars of bonuses in June.
That's not tone deaf. That's whatever is off the cliff beyond.
Y'all stock was 8 cents a share for real?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is bank rob? Right.
Well, Ray Hartmann, I want to ask you about Washington University, which announced this week that it would no longer be providing puberty blockers or hormone therapy for adolescents, for minors. Now, they're still going to offer counseling, and they're going to refer students elsewhere. But as you know, some students or youngsters, when I say youngsters, under 18, transitioned from one sex to another with the help of Washington University. That's not going to happen anymore. What do you think?
I think we all ought to butt out of their lives. I mean, if people want to make, particularly when the parents are on board, you know, I think that we've really, I understand the trans issues, you know, transgender issues divide us a lot, but we just ought to live and let live. These people that, you know, make that, you know, that's who they are. They're not hurting anybody. You know, they're not bothering anybody, and it's just not the role. I sound like an old-fashioned Republican, which I used to work for. It's about, you know, we talk about, you know, religious freedom. Let them have their own choices and their own identity, and it's just not my business. And you know, it's just, I say it's hideous. And the medical profession is very unified on this point. I mean, very unified. I talked to a couple pediatricians. They feel very strongly about it. And I'm one of those people that couldn't pass an 8th grade science test. I'm just not, like most of our legislators, I'm just not interested in second-guessing the entire, all these dedicated pediatricians, people that have devoted their life to it. And this isn't something speculative. These are people who know what they're doing.
Can I jump in?
It's just,
I
just leave them alone.
I think there is division within. The New York Times did a story on this very issue, and Washington University 3 weeks ago. And even the doctors in Boston who brought this medical treatment to the United States from, I think, the Netherlands, wrote pieces in the Washington Post saying that it's not being done correctly.
Well, then
there aren't enough mental therapists, there's not enough mental therapy, and similar emails the New York Times found were circulating within Washington University that they were getting 4 or 5 kids every day, and they did not have the ability to give them the proper mental health.
But that's not the business
counseling.
Of government.
Well, it is if
no,
it's
it
children's health care.
No, it isn't. It's
Well,
the
no,
business
government
of
regulates
families.
health care all the time.
It's the business of families and their medical.
But I think maybe Washington University read the story and they realized they were having problems.
Then that's fine for them if they did that. My point is, it's not the role of politicians.
You said the pediatricians are uniform, and they're not ready.
Well, the associations.
No, they're not.
What was really interesting, Josh Gilbert and I talked to Dr. Ken Haller, your good friend, a former Donnybrook Next Up guest, and Josh asked him, since this is such a teeny-weeny percentage of the pediatric population, why is this an issue? And Dr. Haller said, the medical community wasn't making it an issue. It's the state legislatures that are making this a political issue. And I agree with Ray. To me, when it's a child, and it's being presented as if there are drive-up kiosks where children and their families who just decide that with the change of wind direction, they want to change. It's much more, the process is mostly more exhaustive than that. I'm not sure, I haven't read the New York Times report.
No, it apparently wasn't that exhaustive. And don't forget, the whistleblower is a woman who's LGBTQ, married to a transgender individual, and who was one of the first 3 people working there.
So what do you want to do? Just outlaw being trans? Is that what you want to do?
Well,
I mean,
I think,
what do you want to do?
I think that, like Europe, it might be time to dial some of this back, or at least make sure you have the mental health counseling before you proceed.
Now, somebody recently on this show said a private school can do whatever they want to do. Well, the same person is about to say, okay, Washington University, I'm going to take myself out of a whole scientific argument and all that. Is it something that you feel is right? Is it something that you think that you should be doing? Well, stand up to the bully, okay? Don't, you know, like, use your billion-dollar endowment and all that and stand up to this and say we're going to do it. Because I think they're not bowing to the science. They're not bowing to anything in society. They're bowing to these loudmouths down there in Jefferson City, and they're afraid of getting sued.
Well,
and you just have to just stand up to it.
That's a very real threat.
I think what they're concerned about is the liability, because the new legislation
what
says that
I'm saying.
these kids can grow up, change their minds, and then sue the school.
And there goes the $1 billion endowment.
Don't worry about the liability. Stand up for what you think is right.
Right.
You know, I agree with you, Ray, that, you know, the parents and medical people, I trust a lot more than I do Andrew Bailey. But on the other hand, you know, not that long ago, the medical community was pretty much behind frontal lobotomies. I mean, you know,
and tobacco use.
Yeah, it is a little nuanced, but I still go with.
I agree with that, but I also don't think I don't know much about that. I apparently had one, but I don't know that government solved that, did it, or did government come in and outlaw frontal lobotomy?
I have no idea.
I think they did.
Oh, maybe they did.
I think they did.
Maybe
you know, hey, right.
Mostly,
Let's hope so.
I thought it was mostly stuff.
Hey, Bill McClellan, I want to ask you about, I guess it's a new direction for City Hall. There are now homeless camped underneath the office of the mayor of the city of St. Louis, Tashara Jones, at room 200 at City Hall. And now, I guess the Jones administration would like to change the way homeless shelters are placed in the city. Heretofore, you had to get signatures from half the property owners close to the proposed shelter. She's going to do away with that and have a board look at where the shelters should best be placed and disregard, or at least not be vetoed by the community. What do you say?
I think that it's the worst idea I've ever heard of. You know, the idea of going into a neighborhood, maybe a struggling neighborhood, maybe a good neighborhood, and plopping down a homeless shelter, you know, it's unfair to neighborhoods. I mean, I was in favor of the New Life Evangelistic Center, and I was, when the loft dwellers looked, you know, bought their loft and looked around and said, oh my gosh, there's homeless, we have to do something. I said, well, you bought your loft next to the homeless shelter. They go, well, maybe we should put one in your neighborhood. I go, I didn't buy next to the homeless shelter. It's like buying next to the airport and complaining about noise. And I think that this could destroy neighborhoods that are fragile. And plus the politics is going to be beyond belief. You know, if you're a friend of the mayor's or a friend of Megan Green's, maybe you won't get one in your block. You know, in Kara Spence's ward, they might be every other block. I just don't think there's any good I can see of this. I think we should have, you know, I wrote long ago that on the river, on the north side, near where the Department of Corrections has its release center, we should have dormitories built, and the homeless people can live in these dormitories, and we can have services there. The idea that you're going to put like one in Holly Hills and one over here, there's no services around for them. It just seems crazy.
This might be the final straw for a lot of those fragile, those people who are clinging to the idea of city living, because I mean they've been through so much lately. This might just be the thing that pushes them completely over the edge.
I disagree. I think someone's got to make the decision. The buck's got to stop somewhere. Right now, we have homeless living all over the city of St. Louis, and you can't move them, according to federal law, off of public property unless you have a place to put them. And no neighborhood wants to take them. So there's going to have to be a carrot and a stick. You're going to have to, someone's going to have the strength to find a location, and then that neighborhood's got to get extra police services and extra lights and whatever else.
How about in an industrial area?
Well,
and we've got several.
Industrial area.
I don't know. You've got to have services for people.
Yeah, you have to have services for people.
But Bill, I think Bill's right that this is a problem that we have to. First of all, these are people. We can't.
Exactly.
You know, they're people, but the idea that the city is sending people door to door to figure out what to do with the Rams money, but it doesn't even bother
to talk to the residents.
Now
Good
it's telling
point.
people that we don't want to hear from you about your. You know, it's not the way to run a city. I mean, it's just not.
It
now, having
is.
said, no,
I
it
bet you
isn't.
most cities are run that way.
Think you can just,
I bet you most. Do you think Mayor Daley
Not with
had
the
to get the
homeless.
signatures of half the
Yeah,
neighborhood?
I
don't
think
think
you
so. I think
should
he put
have.
them wherever he
He was
wanted.
the mayor of
wasn't putting
Chicago.
Homeless shelters.
I bet he put in homeless
residential
shelters.
neighborhoods.
I bet you he did.
I lived there. I don't remember any in my neighborhood.
The second Mayor Daley.
Wait a minute, Al Capone was alive when you lived.
Al Capone was a hero.
Elliot Ness was there.
But Elliot Ness went to my high school. I mean, a little bit before me.
I think that what
completely
will
gone off
happen
the
is,
rails at this
all right, wherever they go, they will not go to the worst neighborhoods in North St. Louis. They will not go to the best neighborhoods in South St. Louis, so that, well, here we go again. It's going to be that central corridor area. Fend for yourselves. It's not fair. It's not fair.
Well, you think where the mansions are on you know, Lake and all that.
Westmoreland.
Westmoreland.
Yeah.
You're going to put one there?
Don't think so.
Maybe right next to McCloskey's house.
Right. And in any municipality in St. Louis County, if this city council got together and said, like, hey, we have
we're not gonna
we got
talk to
this
the
kind of
neighbors.
problem, and we're not going to talk to you about that. In fact, we got to put like a, you know, the dog pound in somebody's neighborhood. It's going to go in.
All right, we got to cut you off there, but that's going to be interesting. And a little program note, because there's a special documentary airing Monday night at 7 o'clock. It's called Power of the Pitch. It's going to be here at 9 PBS, and it's produced and directed by our very own Anne-Marie Berger. So she went to London and got some great footage and interviews to take a look at how sports can transform a neighborhood. I don't know if she includes homeless shelters, but we'll find out Monday. Hey, let's find out what folks had to say about last week's program. Hannah Locks wrote, your recent discussion about importing teachers from abroad showed a complete ignorance of the situation. Students who cause problems often have bigger problems at home. Teachers on the front line should be listened to for realistic solutions. And we heard from Lori Sweet, who wrote, why not keep indoor pools open 24 hours? Many college towns do it for med students. Lifeguards like varied hours, too. Fitness is needed around the clock. Thanks, Ms. Sweet. You can write us care of 9 PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. We love those emails, Donnybrook at 9pbs.org, and post on X using hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Listen to our 9 line at 314-512-9094. And listen to us on your favorite podcast source, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. Well, it looks like we got our 199th great show in the record book. Thank you so much. And we'll be singing country music real soon after one of these shows. Thank you very much. See you next week.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.